Mystical City of God, Book 2, Chapter 3. On the doctrine the Queen of Heaven gave me regarding the 4 vows of my profession. My daughter and friend, I do not wish to deny you the instruction you seek with the desire to fulfill it, but receive it with reverence and a devout heart, ready to act on it. The wise man says, "My son, if you have given your pledge for your neighbor, you have bound yourself. You are snared by the words of your mouth." In keeping with this truth, anyone who has made vows to God has pierced the hand of their own will, so as not to remain free, nor have any choice except to fulfill what was promised, according to the will and selection of him to whom they are now bound and obligated by their own mouth and words of profession. Before the vows were made, the soul was free to choose its path. But once the soul has bound and obligated itself, it must understand that it has entirely surrendered its freedom to God in the person of the Superior. All ruin or remedy of the soul lies in the use of its freedom. But because most misuse it and are lost, the Most High established the fixed state of religion by means of vows. In this way, the creature, using its freedom just once with a perfect and prudent choice, hands over to God what would have been lost through many future abuses, had she remained untethered and free to choose and reject at will. In this way she loses her freedom to do evil and secures it for the good, as though bridled by a rein that turns her away from danger and guides her along a straight and secure path. She breaks the bondage to her passions and gains a new dominion over them, becoming queen and mistress of her own inner kingdom. She becomes subject only to grace and the movement of the Holy Spirit, who would govern all her actions if she entrusted her entire will to fulfilling what she has vowed. With this, the creature passes from the state of slavery to the exalted dignity of a daughter of the Most High, and from her earthly condition rises to an angelic one, and the defects of sin and its punishment no longer fully touch her. You cannot imagine in this mortal life how many and how great are the goods and treasures gained by the soul that wholeheartedly and diligently fulfills the vows of her profession. I assure you, dearest one, that religious who are perfect and faithful can attain the merit of martyrs and even surpass them. My daughter, you attained the blessed beginning of so many goods on the day you chose the better part. But take great care, for you have made vows to an eternal and almighty God, to whom even the most hidden things of the heart are known. And if lying to earthly men or failing them in just promises is already something so ugly and detestable to reason, how much more grievous is it to be unfaithful to God in the most just and holy promises made to him? As your Creator, Sustainer, and Benefactor, he deserves your gratitude; as Father, your reverence; as Spouse, your loyalty; as Friend, your faithful love; as most trustworthy, your faith and hope; as Supreme and Eternal Good, your love; as Omnipotent, your submission; and as just Judge, your humble and holy fear. To fail in any of these ways and break what you promised in your profession would be treachery and betrayal. And if in every religious soul who has undertaken a spiritual life such a betrayal is a monstrous offense, how much more shameful would it be in you, who have received more than all others? You must surpass them in love, in labor, and in the return of so many incomparable benefits and graces. Reflect then, soul, how hateful such a fault would make you in the sight of the Lord, of me, of the angels and saints, for we are all witnesses of the love and fidelity God has shown you, like a rich, loving, and most faithful spouse. So labor with great vigilance to never offend him, neither in great nor small things. Do not provoke him to abandon you and give you over to the beasts of your passions and sins, which, as you know, would be a greater misfortune than if he delivered you to the fury of the elements, of wild animals, or of the demons themselves, to unleash upon you all their rage and punishments. Even all of this would be a lesser loss than to commit even venial sin against God, whom you must serve and love in all things and above all things. Any suffering in this life is less than sin, for sufferings pass in this world, but sin may become eternal, and so too its punishment. In this present life, mortals are terrified and shaken by pain and trials, because they touch the senses directly. But they are not equally moved by sin, because, distracted by what is visible, they fail to grasp the punishment that immediately follows sin, which is eternal damnation. And even though damnation is embedded and inseparable from the sin itself, the human heart is so dull and slow that it lets itself be intoxicated by sin, unaware of the punishment, simply because the senses do not perceive hell. And though faith could make hell visible and tangible, it is left idle and dead, as though one did not possess it. O most miserable blindness of mortals! O stupidity and negligence that have so many rational and glorious souls oppressed in deceit! There are no words or arguments that can truly express this dreadful and terrifying danger. My daughter, flee from it, and keep far from such a cursed state with holy fear. Embrace all labors and torments of this life, soon to pass, before you even approach that pitfall. Nothing is lacking if you do not lose God. A powerful remedy for your safety is to never imagine that any sin is small, especially for you and your state in life. Fear even the smallest faults greatly, for the Most High knows that when the creature begins to despise small sins, she opens her heart to greater ones. And love cannot be called worthy if it does not grieve even the smallest displeasure shown to the one loved. The order that religious souls must follow in fulfilling their desires should be, first of all, to be diligent and faithful in keeping the obligations of their vows and all the virtues they contain. Secondly, after this, come the voluntary works called acts of supererogation. Some souls, deceived by the devil and misguided by an indiscreet zeal for perfection, reverse this order. They neglect serious obligations of their state and instead pursue voluntary acts and activities, often small or fruitless, that stem from a spirit of presumption and singularity, seeking to be seen and distinguished as particularly zealous and holy, though they are far from even beginning to be so. I do not want to see such a fault in you, which is highly reprehensible. Rather, I want you to begin by faithfully observing your vows and the communal life. Then add whatever else you can, with God's grace and according to your strength. All of this together adorns the soul and makes it perfect and pleasing in the divine sight. The vow of obedience is the greatest in religious life because it contains a total renunciation and denial of one's own will. In this way, the religious soul has no jurisdiction or right over herself to say I want or I don't want, I will or I won't. All of that has been renounced through obedience and placed in the hands of the superior. To fulfill this vow, you must not be wise in your own eyes, nor imagine yourself the mistress of your desires, your opinions, or your understanding. True obedience must be of the same nature as faith. What the superior commands must be esteemed, reverenced, and believed without attempting to examine or comprehend it. Therefore, to obey you must consider yourself without reason, without personal life or discourse, and like a lifeless body allow yourself to be moved and directed, alive only to swiftly carry out whatever the superior commands. Never deliberate with yourself about what to do. Only think about how to accomplish what is ordered. Sacrifice your own will and slay all your appetites and passions. Once you are thus dead to your own impulses, let obedience become the soul and life of your actions. In the will of your superior must be found your own will, with all your movements, words, and deeds. In everything, seek to be stripped of your own being and to receive a new one that belongs wholly to obedience, without contradiction or resistance of any kind. The most perfect form of obedience, take note, is one in which the superior perceives no discord or displeasure. Rather, obedience should be rendered with satisfaction, and it should be evident that the order is fulfilled promptly, without reply, grumbling, or contrary motions. The superior stands in the place of God, and whoever obeys their superiors obeys the Lord himself, who governs and enlightens them in what they command for the benefit and salvation of their subjects. Disregard for the superior is an offense against God, for it is by their voice and through their commands that he reveals and orders his will. Understand that it is the Lord's voice speaking through theirs, or that their tongue becomes the tongue of the omnipotent God. My daughter, strive to be obedient so that you may sing of victories, and do not fear obedience, for it is the safest path, so safe, in fact, that God does not even remember the errors of the obedient on the day of judgment. Rather, he erases their other sins solely because of the sacrifice of obedience. My most holy Son offered his passion and death to the Eternal Father with particular affection for the obedient, so that by this virtue they might be enriched with forgiveness, grace, success, and perfection in all that they do out of obedience. Even now he often presents himself to the Father to appease him on behalf of humanity, declaring that he died for them in obedience unto the cross, Philippians 2 verse 8. And for this the Father is appeased, because of his delight in the obedience of Abraham and his son Isaac. God bound himself not only to spare the obedient son, but also to make him the Father of the incarnate Word, and the chosen head and foundation of countless blessings. The vow of poverty is a noble freedom and release from the heavy burden of temporal possessions. It is a relief to the spirit, a support to human frailty, and a liberation for the noble heart, which is made to receive eternal and spiritual goods. Poverty is a satisfaction and fullness, in which the thirsty craving for earthly treasures is stilled. It is the highest and noblest dominion over all riches. My daughter, voluntary poverty contains all this and more. Yet the children of this world, lovers of wealth and enemies of holy and rich poverty, know none of it, because they lack all of it. They do not understand, even though they suffer it, how heavy a burden wealth is. It weighs them down to the ground, indeed, to the depths of the earth, as they dig for gold and silver with toil, sweat, and sleepless care. They strive not like rational men, but like brute beasts, ignorant of what they do or suffer. And if wealth is so heavy a burden even before it is acquired, how much heavier is it once possessed? Let those who have fallen into hell under its weight bear witness. Let the insatiable efforts to keep it testify, along with the unbearable laws and structures that riches and the rich have introduced into the world. If all this chokes the spirit, tyrannically oppresses its weakness, and debases the noble capacity of the soul, made to receive eternal goods and even God himself, then it is certain that voluntary poverty restores the creature to her noble state. It relieves her of vile servitude and places her in the free dignity in which she was created to be the mistress of all things. She is never more truly a mistress than when she despises wealth, and she possesses and uses riches most excellently when she distributes them freely or voluntarily leaves them behind. Her hunger is satisfied when she desires not to possess them. Most of all, by keeping the heart empty, she makes it capable of receiving the treasures of the divinity, for which God created it with almost infinite capacity. My daughter, I desire you to study this philosophy and divine science well, so forgotten by the world. Not only by the world, but even by many religious souls who have promised it to God, and have greatly provoked his indignation through their failure. These transgressors of the vow of poverty receive a heavy punishment, though they do not notice it. For by banishing voluntary poverty, they have distanced from themselves the Spirit of Christ, my most holy Son, and the Spirit he came to teach the world by his example of nakedness and poverty. Though they may not now feel the effects, since the just judge is patient, and they enjoy the abundance they crave, yet at their final judgment they will be left confounded, ashamed, and utterly disillusioned by the severity they never imagined considered, or weighed in the justice of God. Temporal goods were created by the Most High solely to sustain human life, and once this purpose is fulfilled, the cause for their necessity ceases. And since that necessity is limited, easily satisfied, and quickly comes to an end, while the soul is eternal, it is not fitting that concern for the soul be only temporary and passing, while the desire and striving for wealth becomes perpetual and unending in men. It is an extreme perversity to reverse such distinct and important ends and means, that man, in his ignorance, should dedicate all his time, care, labor, and mental effort to his short and uncertain bodily life, and yet grant his poor soul not more than a single hour over many years, and that hour often being the worst and the final one of life. Take advantage, then, my dearest daughter, of the true light and disillusionment that the Most High has given you regarding this dangerous error. Renounce all affection and love for any earthly thing. Even if cloaked under the pretext that you are in need, or that your convent is poor, do not be excessively concerned or anxiously eager in seeking what is necessary for bodily life. And when you exercise the moderate care you ought to, let it be in such a way that you are not troubled when what you desire is lacking, nor desirous of it with affection, even if it seems to you it is for God's service, For the more you desire other things alongside him, the less truly you love him. You must renounce abundance as superfluous, for it is neither needed nor lawful to possess it in vanity. What is little should also be held in little esteem, for it is a greater error to burden the heart with what has no value and hinders much. If you obtain everything your human judgment deems necessary, you are not truly poor, because poverty in its proper and rigorous sense is to have less than what is needed. Only the one who lacks nothing is truly rich. Possessing more brings unrest and affliction of spirit. Desiring and guarding it without use is a poverty without peace or rest. I desire this freedom of spirit in you, that you not attach yourself to anything, whether great or small, superfluous or necessary. What you require for bodily life should be accepted only insofar as it is absolutely necessary to avoid death or indecency. But even that should be of the poorest and most worn nature. For your clothing, choose what is patched and humble. For food, what is coarse, without indulging any particular tastes. Do not ask for anything that brings pleasure. Instead, accept what you dislike and lack appetite for, so that you may always choose the more perfect path. The vow of chastity encompasses purity of both soul and body. It is easily lost, and depending on how it is lost, difficult, if not impossible, to recover. This great treasure is kept in a castle with many doors and windows, and unless they are well guarded and defended, there is no safety. My daughter, to preserve this vow perfectly, you must make an unbreakable pact with your senses never to move toward anything not directed by reason, and ordered for the glory of your Creator. Once the senses are mortified, it is easy to overcome your enemies, for they can only conquer you through them. Thoughts are not stirred nor revived unless external senses bring in images and forms that fuel them. You must not touch, look at, or speak to any human being, of any condition, male or female, nor allow their forms or images to enter your imagination. In this careful vigilance, which I strongly command, lies the safeguarding of the purity I desire from you. And if you must speak due to charity or obedience, let it be with full seriousness, modesty, and reserve. Concerning your own person, live as one who is a pilgrim and stranger to the world, poor, mortified, burdened, and loving the hardships of all temporal things, without desiring comfort or delight. See yourself as someone far from home, sent here to labor and battle strong enemies. And since the greatest and most dangerous is the flesh, you must resist its natural impulses with vigilance, for in them lie the temptations of the devil. Rise above yourself and seek a dwelling far above all that is earthly, so that you may live under the shadow of the one you desire, Cant 2:3, and find peace and true rest in his protection. Surrender your whole heart and strength to his chaste and holy love, imagining no creatures exist for you except inasmuch as they help and oblige you to love and serve your Lord. In all else they should be despicable in your eyes. She who is called the spouse of Christ, and is so in truth, must lack no virtue. But chastity is the one that most conforms and assimilates her to her spouse, for it spiritualizes her, distances her from earthly corruption, and raises her to an angelic state, and even to a certain participation in God's own being. It is the virtue that beautifies and adorns all others, elevates the body to a higher state, enlightens the understanding, and preserves the soul in its nobility, superior to all corruption. And because this virtue was a special fruit of the redemption, merited by my most holy Son on the cross, where he took away the sins of the world, it is for this reason especially that it is said the virgins follow the Lamb, Apoc 14:4. The vow of enclosure is the wall that guards chastity and all other virtues. It is the setting in which they are preserved and shine. It is a heavenly privilege that exempts religious women, the spouses of Christ, from the heavy and dangerous tributes that worldly freedom pays to the prince of vanity. Through this vow, religious live in a secure harbor, while other souls are tossed about and wrecked in the storm of danger with every step. With such great gain, enclosure is not a narrow place. Rather, it offers religious women the wide-open fields of virtue and of the knowledge of God, his infinite perfections, mysteries, and wondrous works done for mankind. In these spacious fields, the soul can and should roam freely and rejoice. If she does not, then even the greatest liberty may seem a narrow prison. For you, my daughter, there is no other freedom. I do not want you to restrict yourself by the measure of the world. Rise to the heights of divine knowledge and love, where no bounds or limits confine you. There, live in expansive freedom, and from that height you will see how narrow, vile, and contemptible is all created reality when compared to the expansiveness your soul was made for. To the physical enclosure, you must add the enclosure of your senses. Let them be fortified and strong, preserving your interior purity and the fire of the sanctuary, Leviticus 6 verse 12, which you must always keep burning. In order to guard your senses and maintain enclosure, never approach the doors, gates, or windows of the convent, nor even remember that they exist, except for fulfilling a duty of your office or by command of obedience. Desire nothing, since you are not to possess it. Strive for nothing, since you should not even desire it. Your good and your peace will be found in your retreat, modesty, and vigilance, along with your ability to please me and merit the rich reward and grace you seek.